All right, FinTech, get ready, folks, because that's what we're diving into today.
Sounds exciting.
It is. And, we have some really interesting listener-submitted sources for this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, excerpts from this New Stock radio show. They call it Fintech Wars.
Ooh.
Yeah. And then this document packed with information, it's just called pasted text.
Okay.
It's going to be fascinating. It feels like there's a real battle brewing here, and we're going to unpack it.
Definitely. The world of finance is changing so rapidly.
Right. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing in this deep dive. We're going to try to figure out who are the key players, where are the battle lines, and most importantly, what does any of this even mean for, your wallet?
Yeah, it's all about the impact, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So are you ready to kind of figure out how these fintech wars are already impacting you without you even realizing it?
Absolutely. Let's get into it.
Sure.
But maybe we should start with the basics.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What exactly is fintech?
Yeah, because I feel like sometimes it's a bit of a buzzword.
Oh, for sure. But it's also so much more than that. At its core, fintech really is about using technology to make financial services easier and more efficient and more accessible too.
Yeah. So we're talking about ATMs, credit cards, online banking. That's all fintech.
Exactly. Things you use all the time. But now we're going even further. Mobile payment apps, cryptocurrency platforms, even, things like artificial intelligence that are starting to make investment decisions. It's all changing so fast.
It really is. And something that really stood out to me in the pasted text document is that fintech, it's not just about a few new apps and services. It's actually reimagining the entire global financial system.
It's huge.
It is massive. And one of the most fascinating things is how this shift is actually playing out. On one side, you have the big traditional banks, trying to hold on to everything.
Yeah, they've been in power for so long.
Right. But then on the other side, you have these huge tech giants who are stepping onto the scene with their own strengths and strategies. And that clash is kind of what's fueling these fintech wars.
A real battle of the titans.
Okay, so let's talk titans then. Apple, Google, Amazon, Facebook, they're everywhere. And now they're targeting our finances.
It can be a little intimidating, right?
It is a little bit. So what are they up to?
Well, they're definitely shaking things up. The pasted text document really highlights how these companies are disrupting banking in a big way.
Yeah.
Think Apple Pay, Google Pay.
Oh, yeah, those are everywhere now.
Right. They're challenging those traditional ways of paying. And then you've got Amazon offering a whole bunch of financial services to businesses and regular people.
Oh, okay.
And then there's Facebook, with their DM project trying to create their own digital currency.
Oh, their own currency?
It's a power move if I've ever seen one.
That's wild.
And it's not just, happening here in the West. Pasted text points out that Chinese tech giants like Alibaba and Tencent, they're already way ahead of the game. They have incredibly popular payment platforms in their own markets.
So how are these big tech companies changing the game? Is it all about just fancy new technology?
It's definitely more than that. Think about it. Traditional banks, they rely on physical branches, those personal relationships, and often, let's face it, some outdated systems.
Mm-hmm.
But tech companies, they were born in the digital world. They're all about making things super efficient and cheap, and they know how to create really seamless, easy-to-use experiences. Plus, let's not forget, they have tons of data they're using to personalize everything, which makes it even more appealing.
That's true. I barely even go to my bank branch anymore.
Right.
Almost everything I do is on my phone. It's so much easier.
And that's a huge point.
Yeah.
There's this generational shift happening. Younger people who have grown up in this digital world, they expect to do everything online, instantly, including their banking.
Yeah. Makes total sense. So where does cryptocurrency fit into all of this?
Oh, cryptocurrency is a major player in the fintech wars. It's challenging the whole foundation of the financial system.
Okay. But for those of us who aren't crypto experts, can you break it down for us?
Sure. So at its core, cryptocurrency is a digital currency that uses cryptography for security. What sets it apart is that it's decentralized, meaning it's not controlled by any government or financial institution. Bitcoin, you've probably heard of it.
Yeah.
It was the very first cryptocurrency created back in 2009. And since then, thousands of other cryptocurrencies, they're also known as altcoins, have popped up.
Thousands. Wow.
Yeah. Pasted text also mentions something called stable coins. Have you heard of these?
I've heard of them, but I don't really understand them.
So stable coins are like the, more grounded cousins of Bitcoin. They're designed to hold a stable value, usually pegged to a fiat currency like the US dollar. So that helps to avoid those huge price swings we see with Bitcoin.
Okay, that makes sense. But you mentioned cryptocurrency is decentralized. What does that actually mean? Like, how is it different from using regular money?
So with traditional currency, you rely on banks and governments to make transactions happen, right? But with cryptocurrency, those transactions happen directly between individuals. They use this technology called blockchain to verify and record everything. It basically cuts out the middleman.
So I'm guessing this blockchain thing is a pretty big deal then.
You guessed right. Blockchain is the underlying technology for most cryptocurrencies. But its potential goes way beyond just digital money.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Pasted text actually highlights how blockchain is being used to revolutionize, like everything from supply chains to healthcare records. It's even being used to, like, verify the authenticity of luxury goods.
Wow. So we've gone from ATMs to altcoins in like the blink of an eye.
It's amazing, right?
It's a lot, but I have a feeling we're just scratching the surface of this whole fintech revolution.
Oh, absolutely. We've got lots more to explore.
All right, so let's keep diving. We'll go even deeper into the amazing potential of blockchain. And also, we're going to be talking about the role of regulators in this whole wild west of finance. But first, a quick break.
Welcome back. So before the break, we were talking about blockchain and all this potential it has to, like, revolutionize pretty much everything, not just finance.
It's a lot to take in, right? Like, blockchain feels kind of like this hidden force that could change everything.
Yeah, it's pretty transformative.
So in, like, simple terms, how would you explain it?
So basically, blockchain is this really secure and decentralized way to store information and then verify it. It's almost like a digital ledger.
Okay.
But instead of being kept in one place, it's spread across this entire network of computers, so it's really hard to tamper with.
Okay, so can you give us an example? Because pasted text mentioned that blockchain can be used for things like supply chain management.
Yeah. So imagine you're buying something online. Let's say a new coffee maker.
Okay. I like coffee.
With blockchain, you could track every single step of that coffee maker's journey. You could see where all the parts were made, how it was put together, when it was shipped, how it got to your doorstep.
So I could basically follow my coffee maker around the world.
Pretty much.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. And that level of transparency is really a game changer for supply chains. It can help prevent counterfeit products, make sure things are sourced ethically, and, even make the whole process more efficient, which could save consumers money.
Okay, so it's not just a fancy way to track a package.
Exactly.
There are real benefits. Pasted text also mentioned healthcare records, which is a place where security and privacy seem really important.
Absolutely. So imagine your medical records stored securely on a blockchain. You have complete control over your data, and you can give access to doctors, hospitals, only as needed.
That sounds a lot better than how it is now, with records kind of scattered all over the place.
Right. And not only does it give patients more control, it could also really streamline the whole healthcare process, maybe even lead to faster diagnoses and treatments. And then also it could really help medical research because it could give researchers access to data while keeping everything private.
Yeah, those are huge benefits. So I'm starting to see why people are so excited about this whole blockchain thing. It's not just about cryptocurrency. It's really about trust and transparency, which seem really important in our digital world.
Exactly.
But, we keep talking about all this disruption, all this innovation. It feels like it could get a little out of control. So, like, who's making sure that things stay safe and fair in all this fintech kind of free-for-all?
That's the big question. And that's where regulators come in. They have a really important role in the fintech wars.
It's like we need some rules of the road, right?
Yeah. And the regulators are facing a huge challenge. They need to find this balance between letting innovation happen, but also making sure that consumers are protected and that the whole financial system stays stable. It's a really tricky thing to do.
So how are they approaching this? Because pasted text talked about something called the sandbox approach. What is that?
Yeah. So the sandbox is kind of an innovative way for regulators to keep up with how fast fintech is moving. It basically creates this safe space where companies can test out new products and services, but under the watchful eye of the regulators.
So it's like a testing ground.
Exactly. And it lets the regulators figure out what the risks and benefits are of all these fintech innovations before they're available to everyone. And, countries like the UK and Singapore, they've actually been using this approach, and it seems to be working pretty well.
So are there different regulations for different countries? Because it seems like that could be really confusing for these companies, especially if they're working internationally.
Yeah, for sure. That's one of the big challenges with fintech because it's global. Different countries have different approaches, and that can be a real headache for the companies that are trying to navigate everything. So yeah, international cooperation is going to be really, really important.
Sounds like the regulators definitely have their work cut out for them trying to keep up with all this.
Oh, yeah. But finding that right balance between innovation and consumer protection, that's going to be super crucial for the future of fintech.
Okay, so we've talked about the players, those disruptive technologies, and the regulators trying to keep up with it all. It's clear these fintech wars are changing everything about finance, but what does this actually mean for us, the everyday people kind of caught in the middle?
That's the question, right? Like these fintech wars aren't just happening in Silicon Valley or something. They're really impacting how we do our banking, how we invest, even how we think about money.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I've definitely noticed changes in my own life. I hardly ever use cash anymore. I do almost all my banking on my phone. And I'm way more aware of other ways to invest, like cryptocurrency.
Yeah. And that's really just the beginning. As these fintech wars keep going, we're going to see even more changes and more innovation. So the key is going to be staying informed, being flexible, and just kind of embracing the changes that benefit us as consumers.
So we're not just spectators, we're actually participants in all of this.
Absolutely.
Okay, so are you ready to wrap things up with some final thoughts for our listeners?
Yeah, I think so. We've covered a lot of ground. We started with the basics of fintech, got into the complexities of blockchain, and then talked about all those regulatory challenges.
And of course, how these fintech wars are like changing the whole financial landscape and how those changes are showing up right in our wallets.
Exactly. And, pasted text ended with a really interesting question. Who's going to win these fintech wars? Traditional banks or the tech titans? What do you think?
It's a tough one.
It really is. Because both sides have their advantages. The traditional banks have all that experience in existing infrastructure. But the tech companies, they're fast, they're innovative.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens, but one thing's for sure. Finance is going to look very different in the future.
I think so.
And that's exciting. Like we have this real opportunity to build a financial system that is fairer, more efficient, and accessible to everyone.
I like that. But before we get carried away dreaming about the future of finance, I want to bring it back to our listeners for a minute. Our sources have painted this really vivid picture of this battle between, like, big tech and the traditional banks. But what about the rest of us? Where do we fit into all this?
That's a great point. We're not just watching these fintech wars happen. We all have a role to play in shaping how finance evolves.
I like that. So we're not just spectators, we're participants. So how do we make our voices heard? Like, what choices can we make to kind of influence how this whole fintech revolution plays out?
Well, I think it starts with being informed and asking questions. Like, which companies do we trust with our money? What technologies are we okay with using? And ultimately, what kind of financial system do we want for ourselves and for, future generations?
Those are big questions. It's easy to feel kind of overwhelmed with all this. What advice would you give someone who's, just starting to explore the world of fintech?
Don't be afraid to just dive in and start learning.
Yeah.
Try out different fintech apps, different services, read articles, listen to podcasts like this one to stay up to date on everything. And I think most importantly, don't just passively accept the changes that are happening. Really be a part of shaping the future of finance.
That's a great point. It's so easy to get caught up in all the hype and excitement, but it's important to really think about the choices we're making.
Yeah, exactly.
We have more power than we realize to shape this whole landscape.
Absolutely. And remember, this is just the beginning. Fintech is constantly evolving, so what's hot today might be old news tomorrow. So stay curious, keep learning, and keep asking questions.
Well said. Okay, so we've covered a ton of ground today, from the rise of big tech in finance to the complexities of blockchain, the challenges of regulating all this. It's clear that these fintech wars are changing everything.
And we've only scratched the surface, really. Fintech has this potential to create a financial system that's more inclusive, more efficient, and accessible for everyone. But it's up to all of us to make sure that happens.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the fintech wars, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. Don't be intimidated by all the jargon, by the complexity of it all. This is an exciting time. Embrace this opportunity to learn and explore.
And remember, the future of finance is in your hands. Make informed choices and help build the financial world you want to see.
Thanks for joining us on this journey, and until next time, keep diving deep and keep asking those questions.